So this article has emerged today, so I'm going to go through it and explain to you what is utterly rubbish about it, but how it relates to Abu Dhabi 2021. So the article is that Felipe Massa sues the FIA, F1 and Bernie Ecclestone for the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix crash he claims cost him the world title. 2008. So we're talking almost 16 years ago now. Okay. Former F1 driver Felipe Massa is seeking $80 million in damages from the FIA, Formula One and Bernie Ecclestone over the 2008 Crashgate scandal. Massa was leading the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix when Nelson Piquet intentionally crashed to help his Renault teammate Fernando Alonso win the race. This is what we know. Felipe Massa lost the World Championship on the final lap of the 2008 season. Felipe Massa has filed a lawsuit in London against the FIA, Formula One management and Bernie Ecclestone over the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. Massa is seeking up to 82 million in damages, which includes the prize money he lost and other potential deals he would have obtained as F1 champion. So, that claim for compensation, the damages, is prize money lost and potential deals he would have obtained as F1 champion. How does that relate to Sir Lewis Hamilton? Sir Lewis Hamilton, currently, as the records show, is tied on 7 world championships with Michael Schumacher. The reality is he is an 8-time world champion. He'd be out on his own as the greatest statistically. Well, he is the greatest, but every statistic would reflect that he is the greatest of all time in his sport, in his profession. That carries with it a lot of kudos. That allows him to get even more sponsorship money, even more deals, bonuses on the deals that he already has. Enables him to command even more because of his profile and his status. That was robbed from him. Okay. The former Ferrari drivers' representatives confirmed they had filed legal action in the London High Court on Monday. Formula One management and the FIA declined to comment when contacted by Sky Sports News. So I'll go into this and we'll expose lawyers and what lawyers are willing to do as well. The Brazilian has claimed since last year he was the rightful 2008 world champion due to the incident known as Crashgate at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix when Nelson Piquet Jr. deliberately crashed to help Renault teammate Fernando Alonso win the race. Piquet's accident led to a safety car during which a botched Ferrari pit stop saw Ferrari's Massa fall from leader to a 13th placed finish. The incident had a significant impact on the outcome of the drivers' title race, with Massa missing out by a point when Lewis Hamilton overtook Timo Glock at the final corner of the final lap of the season in Brazil. Law firm Vieira Rezende said in a statement that the FIA had acted properly. Had the FIA acted properly, Mr. Massa would have won the Drivers' Championship that year. Okay, so I'll read it through and then we'll go back through it. Mr. Massa also seeks damages for the significant financial loss he has suffered due to the FIA's failure, in which Mr. Ecclestone and FOM were also complicit, a statement read. As Mr. Ecclestone has admitted, there was enough information in time to investigate the matter in 2008 and cancel the race in Singapore. Mr. Ecclestone further affirmed that, had the results of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix been cancelled, Felipe Massa would have become world champion and that Mr. Massa was cheated out of the title he deserved. Attempts to find an amicable resolution have been unsuccessful, leaving Mr. Massa with no choice but to initiate legal proceedings. Recent events naturally demonstrate that the issue of transparency and integrity in Formula One remain relevant, and it is clear that serious work is needed to restore its credibility and long-term future. Although the FIA investigation in 2009 concluded it had never before considered charges as serious, even after the revelations brought forward last year, the results of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix still stand and remain officially sanctioned by the FIA. Formula F1 Chief Executive Ecclestone last year claimed that he and then FIA President Max Mosley were aware of a potential breach during the 2008 campaign and decided not to do anything. He added he chose not to investigate the incident until the season ended, when it was too late to change the standings. That revelation has left Massa looking at possible legal avenues to challenge the season's outcome. Sky Sports News has contacted Bernie Ecclestone's representative for comment. So, and that's the end of the article. Now, it's bollocks, and I'll tell you why it's bollocks. If we go back up here, where Felipe Massa's legal representative, so there's always a law firm willing to represent you if you are willing to pay them money to represent you. They will concoct a bullshit argument on your behalf if they are getting paid to do so. Mercenaries, okay? You pay them money, they will do what you ask them to do. Mercenary lawyers. They're not looking at the actual situation. So, in a sporting calendar, if cheating takes place, do you cancel the event? The answer is no. What you do, you disqualify the cheats. Okay? So, all that happens in Singapore, Renault cheated. Renault were the team that benefited from the cheating. Renault get disqualified. That is what the FIA needed to do. That is what Formula One management needed to do. They didn't do so. Fernando Alonso still has that trophy, despite the fact that they know Renault cheated. And they still haven't done anything about it. That demonstrates corruption within the FIA, within Formula One management. Okay, so there is corruption going on. 100% there is corruption. And Bernie Ecclestone is 100% corrupt. He knew about it, and Renault still have the trophy. If you look into the details of the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, one of the sponsors at that event was ING, a Dutch investment banking firm. Okay, one of the sponsors of the event. You'll see their banners around the circuit when you watch that event back. Renault, one of their car sponsors, one of the big brands on their car is ING. Wow, the first ever night race in Formula One, the big global spectacle where the eyes of the world are on it. And an ING sponsored car wins this ING sponsored event. Global coverage, global exposure. These things run deep. They run deep. So, Renault should have been disqualified. How did this affect Felipe Massa? Well, it affected Felipe Massa in exactly the same way that it affected every other driver in the race. An incident occurs in a Formula One race, and that incident produced a safety car. Is that not normal? Okay, is that an unprecedented situation? No, it's not. If a crash happens, the FIA deal with it by working out how they're going to deal with a crash in the safest possible way. They deployed the safety car. Is that normal? Yes, it is. So, what had to happen? Well, you make a strategy call, and one of those strategy calls could be that you pit your car for fresh tyres to save you time, okay, save you overall race time by getting the benefit of pitting during that safety car period. So that's what Ferrari did. That's what McLaren did. That's what lots of other teams did. What was the problem? The problem was that Ferrari messed up. Had Ferrari not have messed up with their refueling rig, then Massa would have pitted, got the tyres changed, got refueled, got back out into the race, and may well have gone on to win that race or score points. The issue wasn't the fact that a car crashed and whether that car crashed by design. What affected Massa's result that race was Ferrari messing up. Now they can say, oh, well, if that crash hadn't have happened, then we wouldn't have pitted. Okay, well, look, it did happen and everybody was affected in the same way. You were not disadvantaged compared to every other competitor. Certainly wasn't disadvantaged in comparison to your rivals in that race or for the title. You don't void an event just because one team has cheated in that event. You would disqualify the cheats. The problem was Ferrari messing up. And yet Massa's legal team want the whole event scrubbing. They want the event scrubbing because Bernie Ecclestone has suggested that would have been the way that they would have wanted to deal with it. Why? Because you're looking at the outcome, you're looking at a black man winning, and you are clutching at straws, you bastards, to try and remove that title from a black man. Because that is how you are motivated. That is how you are driven. Bernie Ecclestone, you're a racist cunt. That is why you said what you said. You show me in the rules and regulations of the sport, of any sport, if somebody cheats in this event, we will void the entire event. No. You disqualify the cheats. Now, there are certain instances where it would be valid to argue for and request the cancellation of the results from that race. And that would be had your race been adversely affected as a result of that incident in a different way to every other competitor, but that wasn't your own fault. It was the fault of Ferrari. Had Ferrari have not messed up at that pit stop, it is highly likely that Massa would have either won or scored enough points to win in the championship. It is their error. Even after that happened, there was still plenty of time left in that race for Massa to make up places and get himself into the points. He didn't do so. He lost it. Psychologically, Felipe Massa drove, well, not psychologically drove, he drove terribly after that incident, which seemed to indicate that psychologically he had lost the plot. You can go back and watch the race. He made numerous errors. He was lapping much slower than he previously was. He just wasn't on it after that incident had taken place. So he didn't psychologically get himself in the right place to say, right, my job now is, despite this happening, I've got to get on with it and I've got to still try and score as many points as possible to add them to my season-long total to see if I can accumulate the most points this season, because that is what you have to do. His team messed up, it delayed his pit stop, it dropped him down the order, okay? And at that stage, it's nothing to do with, oh, well, one of the teams cheated to cause this. Well, that incident affected every team. Every team was subject to that safety car. Every team had the option of pitting or not. Every team that did pit had to change their tyres and refuel. Your team, Massa, messed up. That was Ferrari's error. Now, your lawyers want that event cancelling. They want that event cancelling because Ecclestone projects that that would be the way to deal with that situation. Cancel the entire thing. Cancel what all the other drivers had achieved in that race, that still went on and concluded that race in the manner that you would any other race, but for the fact Fernando Alonso was in the race. So you just disqualify him and everybody else gets shunted up a place. But even Massa getting shunted up a place doesn't get any points. All it means is that Lewis Hamilton gets more points, so therefore wins the title by even more places. That's what it is. There would be a case, actually, had Lewis Hamilton lost that championship by a point, and I should have actually done the research on this. I think that Hamilton came third in that race. I think the race order was Alonso, Rosberg, Hamilton, and I think the point split was something like 10-8-6. I might be wrong on that, but let's say if Lewis Hamilton won that championship by 1 point that year, had he have lost it by a point, then there would be a case of saying, well, hang on a minute, Alonso should have been disqualified from Singapore because his team cheated. So rather than 6 points for third place, he should have had 8 points for second place. Therefore, with those additional 2 points, that makes him win the championship. That would be a valid case. But suggesting that a race should be voided because one team cheated isn't a valid case. But you've got lawyers willing to argue for that. Now, what you can prove, what you can demonstrate, is that Bernie Ecclestone is corrupt by covering it up. You've covered up a fraud. One of the teams has cheated. You have allowed them to cheat. You have not penalised them for cheating. Their cheating has affected, well, they've got prize money from cheating. They've impacted sporting betting. People have been defrauded from seeing a valid outcome to an event. So anybody that bought tickets to that event have been defrauded from seeing a valid outcome by a team cheating, and you've not penalised them. Anybody that placed a bet on that sport has been defrauded. They've lost money on their bet. If they bet on somebody else, not Alonso, okay, they've lost money due to cheating that you have hidden and covered up fraudulently. Those people that did bet on Alonso won money fraudulently, so obtained money through crime. And what's been done about it? Nothing. Who contrived it? Who was involved in contriving it? Did sponsors, were they involved in the planning process? Did they gain multi-million-dollar contracts as a result of the success that they had that day in that sport? How deep does this corruption go? What are the knock-on effects? What are the implications of that? But what it's not is not something that can be voided to hand a championship to somebody else. Because you wouldn't void the event. You disqualify the cheats. Now, what else would be a valid argument to make? So, had the team that crashed acted to benefit another team, so had Alonso won the championship that year as a result, then that would be a reason to void that event. That would be a reason to say, well, he should have been disqualified from that event and therefore Massa should be the champion. That would be a valid reason. The cheat benefited and therefore that was the reason that he overtook you. Lewis Hamilton wasn't cheating that event. Lewis Hamilton had nothing to do with that. He was impacted in the same way that Massa was. They both had to deal with the same set of circumstances. So had that impacted Renault's championship and made Renault overcome Ferrari, that's a reason to penalise them. Had it been, for example, back then Lewis Hamilton was driving for McLaren. Had McLaren got a B team, a team that it could seek to operate, get it to conduct itself in a way to benefit McLaren, and got that team to crash for the benefit of McLaren, for example, then that would be a reason to overturn the result and maybe void the result on that grounds. It didn't happen that way. So we have a situation in Formula One at the moment where we've got one of those teams, Red Bull, has a B team. If it gets its B team to crash, or, for example, go into the pits, realise that there's a problem, but send that car back out on the track to cause a safety car where it can then benefit from, that's a reason where you can say there's clear collusion going on here, and there's you either disqualify both teams or void the result on those grounds. But again, that would be a case of it would be more a case of disqualifying both teams. If teams if the impact on the title contenders is skewed, then that would be a reason to change the event, to disqualify the event, to say, right, okay, this has taken place, and what it's meant is this person has lost this amount of places, this person has gained this amount of places as a direct result of this event. Okay, therefore it's produced a skewed outcome. That specific scenario has caused this skewed outcome. That would be a reason to say, okay, we can't enable that. We can't allow that to stand. The PK crash that was orchestrated by the Renault team did not directly have that impact on Massa. It had an impact on the entire field of competitors, and that was that it caused a safety car situation. Renault, their strategy around that safety car situation led to them winning the race. Everybody else reacted to that situation, making their own strategy calls in a way that they would have done had that have been an authentic crash. The problem was Ferrari messing up. So that is where the problem lies. Ferrari messing up with their refueling rig. It wasn't something that impacted the team's chances in a skewed manner, and therefore you don't void the race. But what it proves is Formula One and the FIA is a snake pit. They are corrupt. They knew about cheating. They covered it up. Bernie Ecclestone knew about a fraud, knew about a cheat. He covered it up. The FIA knew about a fraud. They knew about cheating. They covered it up. That was Max Mosley, and apparently it was Charlie Whiting as well. They served to cover it up. In 2021, they perpetrated it. They orchestrated it. The entire thing was contrived in a manner that 108.7 million people do not understand. They do not understand that even before this so-called Michael Massa human error occurred, the ending was already contrived. The sports commentary team of Sky Sports were lying about the rules of the sport before the rules were broken. F1 TV, the broadcasters who construct what it is you see and hear, were constructing a narrative to see that play out in front of your eyes in a manner that made you believe it to be authentic. And I can pull that apart and demonstrate that it absolutely was not. The radio messages taking places between each of the teams and the remaining drivers regarding what may or may not happen regarding the resumption of racing is not authentic. It's not in accordance with the rules of the sport. That demonstrates complicity amongst the teams with breaking the rules of the sport. The FIA broke those rules of the sport with known implications. That is race fixing. There's an appeal process. That appeal process upheld an invalid result. It upheld an invalid proposal as to what the rules actually are. The FIA themselves then have a period of time as the governing body with which to say, we have recognised failings here. We have recognised that what has taken place has impacted both the result of that race and the World Championship, and therefore we will set a precedent and demonstrate to you all what has gone wrong, why it's not allowed to go wrong, and this is what we need to do. As governing body, that is what we have to do. They didn't do any of that. Instead, they took 3 months to concoct the biggest shambles of a so-called report into the event possible. They are corrupt. The entire show is corrupt. And the damages in terms of loss of earnings to Lewis Hamilton is of the magnitude that Massa is currently claiming, maybe even more. But there's far more than that, but that's for another video. What you need to understand is lawyers are taking this lawsuit forward on the suggestion of Bernie Ecclestone saying that the resolution would have been to void that race. You don't void that race. You don't void that race. It was Ferrari's error. Any court that would say, yes, that's the right thing to do to void that race just because Ferrari messed up on their refueling strategy, well, there's an agenda in place there. You show me a sport where somebody is cheated, they void the event. The 100 metres final from 1988, where Ben Johnston, a drug cheat, won the event. Did they void that event from the Olympics? Nobody's champion that year, we just voided the 100 metres. Or did they just disqualify the cheat? Well, what you do, you disqualify the cheat. Oh, the reason I came 6th in that race was because the man that won it was taking drugs. No, the reason you came 6th is because there was 4 clean athletes who didn't fail drug tests that beat you. You've been moved up to 5th now that the one that did take drugs has been disqualified. The reason, Massa, why you finished in 13th was because of your team and their failure, and then your subsequent failure in driving well that race. That's the reason you ended up where you ended up. The team that cheated needs to be disqualified. There needs to be serious and significant sanctions to the individuals involved. I think Pat Simmons is now working in the FIA. He was one of the orchestrators of that, apparently, according to the reports I've read. This is the corrupt nature of the sport. Flavio Briatore, one of the orchestrators, was banned, but now invited back into the fold. Pictured with the Domenicali, head of Formula One, Horner, Greg Maffei, head of Liberty Media. The corruption runs deep. So, don't get gaslit into thinking that this is a valid case. It's Bernie Ecclestone not wanting a black man to be the greatest competitor in this sport, so suggesting that one of his titles can be ripped off of him by voiding this event, an event that every team was impacted in the same way, and it was just Ferrari making an error that dropped Massa down to where he was dropped. Anyway, that'll do on this one for now. Thanks for your time, and I'll soon be getting back onto Abu Dhabi. I just want one more video just to show you the Horner situation at Silverstone. Anyway, that'll do. Cheers.